Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
The big stuff we want to talk about today is on-the-ground organizing of activist and social group, specifically, in my case, a secular atheist group.
Nice. Yep.
Yeah, so it's something that I've been working on for years. And if you listen to our back catalog, my first appearance on the show as a guest was to talk about my atheism, and I mentioned the group a couple of times. And Mike and I were talking and thought, hey, maybe it's worth talking about the group in specific rather than atheism in philosophical terms.
Yeah. And also, it's been a topic, not just your group, obviously, but atheist groups have been a topic. You went on Embrace the Void to talk about that. On Scathing Atheist, the diatribe 2 weeks in a row was about the need to organize and have groups and have basically an alternative to church, and that's
I think all that's related. Like that Scathing Atheist talked about that, and then Aaron Rabinowitz, the host of the Embrace the Void philosophy podcast, listened to that and was like, yeah, that's a topic I should talk about. And he has spoken for my group a couple of times, so he reached out and said, hey, do you want to be the person I speak to? But he's mean, he's a philosopher, so I'm like talking about just conversational stuff, and then he starts digging into my brain and challenging me on stuff. It's scary. So that podcast is live now by the time you're hearing this, everyone. So go out and find Embrace the Void podcast. You can hear this conversation with a mean person instead of sweet, lovable Mike.
The very little bit that I know Aaron, I think that he is a significantly nicer person than I am. However, his podcast persona may be less affable than mine.
Yeah, not that he's unaffable. It's that he asks questions that are tough, penetrating questions. Like, I didn't want to talk about this. Why are we talking about this?
Yeah, no, I can be tough and penetrating.
I ain't your wife.
I know, but you're the one she makes the exception for.
Anyway.
So anyway, yeah. So did you start the Triangle Free Thought, or did you take over?
I would say I did neither. I was tricked onto the board a couple of years into my membership, and so I am an equal member of the board with 5 other people. First heard about Triangle Free Thought Society, my local non-believer group, when they had a lawyer in from American Atheists named David Noyce, and they kind of advertised that in local papers. And a colleague of mine, my day job, saw it and said, dude, we should go to this. And we kind of felt like rather than show up as guests and mooch off their bringing in a speaker, we go ahead and pay the whatever it was, $25 or whatever for an annual membership for a single person at the time. We just went ahead and both joined the group. My cat, it's her birthday and she's attacking my computer. Get away with it because it's her birthday. She's 1 today.
Nice.
And but so yeah, when signed up for their group, went to 1 meeting, enjoyed it, didn't go back for 6 months. And when I did, the person hosting the event I went to remembered my application to join because I put my comedy group's website, and she was like, "Ooh, they can do live shows for us for free if this person's in the group." So she had been waiting for me to show up for 6 months. And I don't know, I was around for years. And then one day, same person called me and said, would you like to be on the board? And I'm like, I don't really have the time. I got a comedy group. I got a family. I don't have time for that. And she said, we really could use the help. And I said, tell you what, when you run through the entire list to the bottom of the barrel that nobody wants to do it, then I'll consider it. But like, I don't, last resort, I'll say yes. 5 minutes later, I was copied on an email to the board. Matthew's on the board now.
Nice.
Yeah, it's one of those sneaky things. And then people come back later. You guys aren't doing enough of this. I'm like, listen, all of us were tricked on here. We don't have an obligation to live up to your standards once you tricked us to be here. You don't like the way we're doing it, come on back and take over the board. Come back from where you retired and moved to.
So I think that something that we should talk about is the what the group does for its members, meaning
Sure.
what it fills. I personally know because I've been to a couple of the speakers, and I think did I go to two speakers? I went to Aaron and I went to your brother and sister-in-law. I think that's it.
Yeah, that would be 2.
Okay.
Or 3, depending how you count them.
Well, 2 events, 3 speakers. But so I know about the speakers part of it, but I'm sure you do other stuff, and you've talked on here a little bit about going to Pride and other things. But
so we borrow the idea of Islam of having pillars. We will take good ideas wherever we can find it, and we have 4 pillars. We call them ACES, ACES. A for activism, C for community, E for education, S for service. So to discuss them quickly, service I'll start with, even though it's last on the list because it's the easiest to explain because you all get it. We organize group events to go do service. We've done Habitat for Humanity. We regularly go out and do a volunteer of, like, say, 20 people or something at one of the food banks locally, sorting through potatoes or apples or dry goods or whatever to make care packages, so they have thousands of tons of potatoes and we sort them into 10-pound bags, along with dozens of other volunteers. Or we go to a soup kitchen and feed people soup kitchen. We go to diaper banks and put together collections of diapers for people in need. So service to the community, typical stuff like that. One day we would like to grow up and own a Adopt a Highway segment, but every time we check, they're not currently accepting new requests because all the pieces that are adoptable have been adopted. But someday someone will let go of a nice piece of land and we can adopt a highway and risk getting hit by a car to clean up trash. So that's service. Activism. Activism breaks into a couple of things. So the first is the easy stuff, like tabling at events, being seen. So you mentioned Pride. We tend to go to Durham Pride every year. This year we've also added Apex Pride to it. Talked to the people at Cary Pride, which is the group just started up. They haven't done a full Pride event yet, but we've already been talking about being there. We've been to a number of memorials and protest kind of things for victims of gun violence. And our main reason to go to those things is, one, to let people who may be overlapped in their community and ours know that we exist, because a lot of times people are like, I didn't even know a group like that existed. And I'm like, I should teach you how to use Google. But people don't even know to look. It doesn't occur to them.
You don't know what you don't know sometimes.
Right,
so.
Yeah. So letting them know we're there, but also to be there for the community aspect of that activism, especially with tabling, to say that, if you're hurting right now, if you're in a place where other people might go to their church for community and you don't have that, well, there's us. We're a place of community and you can come to us. And, some of my best friends are people I met through the organization. And, it kind of reminds me of being in a fraternity in school. It's like you're not paying for friends, but you're coming together with like-minded people, and then you'll find your clique and be friends with them offline. It's a nice way to meet people with you at least know some automatic overlaps. Right. And we are working right now on getting a little more active now that life has returned to more normalcy after the pandemic. What we were just starting to do, we just had a speaker in right before the pandemic who was a lobbyist to talk to us about how to be a lobbyist and how to get more involved. So we are prepping a set of postcards to send out to our local representatives and senators saying, hey, we're secular and we vote. These are the issues that we care about, which mostly revolves around things like separation of church and state, around social justice issues where a lot of things that are based in religious belief end up becoming bigotry justified by religion, which I'm not saying is an essential part of religion, but it is a weaponized version of religion that some people, especially in politics, choose to use. And we would like to see that wall between church and state built a little stronger to stop that. And so we want to let our elected officials know we're out here. We are working on a questionnaire to send to candidates that we can publish online or somewhere, saying here are their thoughts around these bills and issues that we're interested in, and around secular issues in general, science-based issues, vaccines, that kind of stuff. And we are a 501(c)(3) charity, so we are not telling anybody who to vote for, what party to vote for, whatever. We just want to get information and share it out there as an educational tool, and you can make your own decisions based on what's out there. we'll probably do an advocacy day when we all meet down by the General Assembly and hand out, here's who lives in this district. Okay, the 5 of us are going to see Maria because she's our representative. You guys are going to go see Gail because she's your senator, and go introduce ourselves and let them know we're here. We care.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and then community is the fun one. So now when it's warm, so like between March or April and September, October, we have picnics once a month, usually at one of the bigger county parks. We rotate between them so that we can be different locations. We have monthly, what we call Happy Heathen Hours, one in, let's see, the Raleigh/Cary one is the second Friday of the month, and it's over at Rally Point Sports Grill across the street from SAS on Harrison Avenue in Cary. The Durham-based one is at a place called Namu on 15501 in Durham, heading towards Chapel Hill, and that's the second Monday of every month. Both those are at 6 o'clock. And then we have a virtual one that we do the 4th Monday of the month. That's just on Google. You can go to tinyurl.com virtual HHH, Happy Heathen Hour, and get to Google Meet for that. And then we do a weekly breakfast at Panera in Raleigh off Lake Boone at 10 o'clock on Saturdays just to get together. And it's a little more, no alcohol because it's not a happy hour. It's at Panera. So it's coffee, tea, and some breakfast stuff. And usually gets philosophy conversations and just a more deeper conversation sometimes. It's pretty cool. It's a place for quiet reflection rather than drinking and having a good time. And then we just started doing a monthly version of those at a Panera in Durham. I think that's the 3rd Saturday of the month at the Patterson Place Panera. But all that's at trianglefreethought.org, our website. You can find all that stuff out.
I'll link everything in the show notes.
Yeah, and then for education is what you brought up, that we have speakers. We tend to bring speakers in. Prior to the pandemic, it was pretty much almost monthly that we would have speakers in. Sometimes we took the summer off because people didn't want to come to sweaty North Carolina in the summer. And during the pandemic, we started doing them virtually. So we've had speakers on, we've had, Embrace the Void's host, ethics professor Aaron Rabinowitz. We've had him twice, and his 3rd visit will be the end of October this year. He's coming down, I think, the last weekend of October. We have a picnic planned, so he's coming to coincide with that because he heard there was free food. And so he's going to come down and talk to us about a topic that I'm not sure exactly which topic at this point. And he has spoken to us in the past about the stereotypical question of, if you're atheist, you can't have morals. So he's talked to us about overcoming that stereotype. First time he came, he talked about his belief in absolute moral realism and that there are absolute morals that exist in the universe. And here's how he sees that and views that as an atheist, and not relying on Alanis Morissette or God as his viewpoint for that. We've had.
I like to think of George Burns, but okay, Alanis Morissette's a good alter. Those are probably my 2 favorite movie depictions of God. To be fair,
had Morgan Freeman in there, and you got the triple.
Morgan Freeman is the most godly of the 3, but I like the other 2 depictions better.
Yeah, and the reason Alanis came to mind was because that was on his slide when he got to a slide about where do you get your morals without God. He got a picture of Alanis Morissette.
Nice.
And I'm listening to a podcast, or I just finished listening to a podcast about dogma earlier today. And we've had doctors come and talk to us about myths around vaccines, and a doctor came and talked to us about the actual vaccine discovery and development process. He works for a company that makes vaccines, so he came to talk to us about that. We've had psychologists talk to us about mindfulness. We've had atheists, lawyers and activists talking to us about what goes on, in the Supreme Court arguments and around the country and fights. Like I mentioned, my brother and his wife came once because she had a heart transplant at 32, and they have a book about their experience, and they talked about facing the possibility of death, and my brother facing the possibility of being a widower, without religion or a religious community to back you up. And we've had author a book about how to deal with death in an atheist world come. Lots of different topics to educate people on. Some of them are directly atheist related, and some only tangentially, but felt it's worth, like the science people. We also are big on skepticism.
So I want to go back to Community for a second. With Community,
It was a good show.
Yeah, it was a good show. The Dean is maybe my favorite. Also Chang. With the group, do you find, because it's the Free Thought Society, it's not the Triangle Atheist Community. Is there? I mean, I know that we're not big on labels, but
No.
are there believers of, even if it's spiritual or anything? Do you tend to have anybody show up?
If so, there are people in the organization who also belong to the Unitarian Universalist Church, which does not require you to be religious to be part of it, but clearly they want more of a church-like atmosphere in their life, but they also want to be in our environment.
Yep.
We don't have a purity test or anything, so like if someone has, I'm spiritual but not religious, I'm not aware of it directly. But also, I'm an old white guy, and the people who tend to gravitate towards being my social peers are probably not the same people who would say that most often. I would assume that's more of the younger crowd saying that.
Yeah.
But that's just an assumption. I don't know. So yeah. So I start all of our program meetings with a long list of synonyms or near synonyms for non-believer. So we're trying a Free Thought Society. If you are an atheist, agnostic, secularist, secular Jew, ex-Muslim, ex-Hindu, skeptic, I go through all the kind of words I can think of. This is your place. You have a home here.
Yeah.
There was one time I was tabling at an event. I think it was after a couple of people were shot on a running trail in Raleigh. We were at a memorial event for them, and someone came to our table. It was put on by March for Our Lives, of young people who are anti-gun violence. And someone came to our table and asked us, well, do you let religious people in your group? And my tabling partner and I kind of looked at each other and said, like, we don't turn anyone away, but you've got 1,000 other options. Every block in North Carolina has a church. There's a couple of temples, a couple of mosques, a couple of synagogues. You got other places to go. We wouldn't turn you away, but why would you want to come to the atheist group? Because the one thing we would not allow would be proselytizing. So if someone came to our group to try to turn us, they would probably be humiliated, because we got some really, really smart people who are really, really good with their mouth organs, who would use words on them that would confuse them. But that's not our goal. We're not evangelizing. We're not like, we don't go to events to say,
right,
hey, be atheist like us. We go to events to say, hey, if you are atheist, there's people to talk to. And it's amazing how many people, usually wives, will like walk by with their husbands and then circle back by themselves later to grab something, or say, oh my God, I wish I could talk to you more about this, but my husband would kill me. I don't think they really mean it in a threat way, but like people who are, and occasionally it's with husbands, people who their spouses don't know that they don't believe anymore, or maybe never did. And they kind of come over to whisper, we're with you. Had political people come over and say, like out of the side of their mouth at Pride event, say, I'm okay with being here at Pride, but I'd love to come and hang out with you guys for a little bit, but probably not here, but I'm with you in my heart. And then kind of walk away and be like, oh, they'll show up at a picnic one day, perhaps, but they don't want to have it be an issue right now.
Yeah. Two things I want to touch on is the first reason I asked was because, the first time I went to one of those things, I think I thought I was still religious to some degree. And being around you, it definitely eased the transition. I don't feel like at any point did I get converted or proselytized or deconverted, like specifically. I just think that being around it, and so I don't expect somebody who's very religious to ever go with good intentions, but like if somebody was just like, these seem like cool people, and I'm like on the fence, I wonder if those people.
Yeah, we certainly like to serve to normalize those of us who can be out, as we say. Not everyone can be. Some people could lose their family or their jobs if they knew they weren't religious. But those of us who are able to say, yeah, I'm secular and love it, serve to normalize it. Like as my dear friend Sarah says, she didn't know atheists were good people till she met my wife and I. Just because she doesn't interact with people who are out as atheists. So sure, she knows others like her husband now, but just didn't know.
Right.
And let me just say for the record, Mike came to the two events he came to to help me with some tech stuff and make videos of
Yeah.
the speakers. It wasn't my attempt to convert him.
No, and I was well down the road. It just was a matter.
Yeah,
I was,
you were down the road when I met you. You were already
yeah,
down the road.
yeah. I just was like hanging on to. I think I've said it before. I was hanging on to the idea of heaven more than the idea of God. I'm the opposite of a lot of deconversion people, where I was, a lot of people say that they have a hard time. Heaven is weird, and I didn't have and so getting rid of that wasn't a problem. It was getting rid of my relationship with God, and I feel very much the opposite, where it's like God is this monster, and heaven was the thing that made it all worth it. The idea that I'd get to meet my grandmother who had died before I was born.
I think that's a big one for a lot of people, seeing their
Yeah.
loved ones. That part, even if they don't like the concept of heaven, because a lot of it makes no sense. What if you've been married and widowed 3 times? Which wife are you with when you get to heaven? I mean, there's a lot of weird questions there.
Foursomes every night.
Yeah.
Um,
What if you're the
I-
person who beat you to death, converted at the last minute and repented and went to heaven, and you're with them? Yay!
yeah. You are not supposed to be up here. And I'd be like, you're not supposed to be up here.
Say it's funny is in the Embrace the Void interview I did with recently, Nazis came up in conversation, and Aaron was like, "Always Nazis with you. You're always bringing up Nazis." And I was like, "I learned it from watching you," because he has written a number of articles about anti-Semitism in conspiracy theories. Like, it all goes back to the Jews. If you dig any conspiracy theory deep enough, and I'm like, how can you accuse me of bringing up Nazis? You wrote the book on it, literally.
Yeah. Yeah. The other question I wanted to ask you, or maybe it was not a question, more of a statement. So you had said that you see a lot of wives come like double back at an event.
Occasional husbands, but I think it's wives more often.
Yeah. And so this is, I think, a cultural difference between the North and the South. And maybe it's Catholicism and Protestantism or whatever. I think of women as significantly more deep in their faith than men. And I think that's because, like, my grandmothers both were, my mom, I should say, my grandmother and my step grandmother were both really strong in their religion. My mom is, and like, so I've always seen the woman more religious, and so I've just always associated it as, for whatever reason, which there's.
I don't think you're wrong. Atheism is like an old white guy thing a lot, but I think that's changing. And I think there might be a little bit of a survivor fallacy in my anecdote, that it's more likely, if you have someone in a relationship who has to be a secret about what their belief is, it's probably more likely to be the wife who can't be out to their spouse.
True.
And so the people who sneak over to me would be more likely to be wives. It doesn't mean the majority of atheists or the majority of couples are like that. That's the majority of people who have to sneak over instead of walking over hand in hand and saying, "Oh, this is great."
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. The other thing I wanted to say was, when you're at the heathen happy hours or the Panera things, do you, if you've got a decent sized group going, do you ever get people that just happen to be at Panera or at the bar coming over and interacting? Does your community events kind of?
We never in a confrontational way. We've never had like an issue. Just set that one aside. We've had people like wander over and like not know what group it is, and we'll say, "Well, we're Triangle Free Thought," like, because I should say all of our events, or 97.325% of our events, are open to any non-believer in the Triangle. I mean, again, we don't turn anyone away, but it's intended for non-believers.
Yeah,
it's not just for paid members of the organization. Like, the money is how we afford to do events that cost money, but we're here to foster community. We would never turn someone away from 97.325% of our events because they didn't pay. So we have like once or twice a year an event that is members only, like catered meal or a meal at a restaurant for the spring equinox or something like that, or Festivus event or something like that. We might do once or twice a year, but for the most part, all the picnics, all the Happy Heathen Hours, everything is open to the public. It's all posted on Meetup. It's posted on our public Facebook page, so you don't have to be a member to come to any of our events, and we don't push the events. Well, we'll happily tell you about the group, but we're not there to, Like, we're not there to proselytize. We're also not there to get people to sign up. Not
Right.
a big marketing push. We just want to be there for people. So yeah, so people have come over and we told them which meetup we are, and they've been surprised. And occasionally it leads to a little bit of conversation. Like I say, none of them have been what you might imagine, like, oh, someone religious is going to challenge us, or we're going to tell them they're stupid, or like, it's more like, oh, so why are you a group? Well, what do you need to get together for? If all you have in common is that you're non-believers, why are you together? Like, that's a decent question. But if you look around the room, cliques have formed at little tables. They met here, and now they form friendships. So they don't, like any other organization. My favorite story like that is actually the reverse, and I have to tell it because it makes me laugh, and I'm the important one. We the place when we did the Raleigh one we try to do it outside now, be COVID intelligent, but we used to always be inside in a side room at the Raleigh Point Sports Grill. And one day we were there like 6 to 8 more or less, and one day at like 10 to 8 this woman comes in, drink in her hand, like almost finished, laughing to the point where she almost couldn't get her story out. And it turns out she showed up at like 6:15. Never been to one of our events before. Didn't know any of us. Saw some people at the bar and said, "Hey, are you the Heathens?" And they said yes. And she spent an hour and a half drinking with a bunch of people, some couples, just hanging out at the bar. Until at some point she said, "So do you guys raise your children like completely atheist or what?" And they were like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Your kids." And they're like, "Why would we do that?" And she's like, "Aren't you the Happy Heathen Hour?" Like, no, we just thought it was funny to say yes, that we're heathens. What? And then she realized she was with the wrong group and came wandering over to us and like seriously laughing so hard. She felt so ridiculous that she couldn't get the story out.
That's amazing.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It'd be worse if it happened the other way. Some priest comes in with us and
yeah. No, when I asked, I wasn't thinking that people would be. I actually have found that for the most part that I'm not getting that much conflict when I talk about it. I get a lot of curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get like people not understanding, but I have not had much conflict. When I was on vacation with my aunts and uncles and my big extended family a few weeks ago or a month ago now, my aunt was asking about if we were going to get Logan baptized, and if Sarah, if we were going to church at all, and I kind of like had to broach the subject of like which was really uncomfortable, and I was like really like sweating. My mom's like 3 feet behind me. I'm like well, I'm an atheist, and so my aunt and uncle and I and Sarah was in the conversation. We had this long conversation, and it was uncomfortable from start to finish, but they were at no point inappropriate or unkind. But it was just so uncomfortable, and they are very much matter of fact people. They're not like they would talk to you about anything in any setting. Basically, it's not a matter of like they weren't trying to expose me or have anything else. It was just a curiosity thing. But I've got like my dad is right behind me, and my dad is fully aware of how I feel. My mom, I don't know, because she runs out of the room when I start to say eighth. But then I had like a cousin here, and and it was just so uncomfortable. But it wasn't. And we, obviously we went back and forth a bit, but at no point were they combative, or there was a lot of questions. There was a couple points where it was like hard disagrees on stuff where, well, what my uncle said, something along the lines of religious people, whether there is a God or not, religious people tend to do better, like live longer, prove that they're happier, or test that they're happier. And I said, yeah, but that is because of the community. Like,
yeah,
and
it's kind of a slight misquote of a study that people belong to tight-knit communities such as churches, and they
Right.
forget the such as part.
Well, and he admitted that, and then he goes, but it doesn't change. And I was like, well, they have communities outside of that, and it was a very good
But
conversation.
yeah, but at the same time, like even if you still identified as Catholic, but you stopped going to church and you weren't part of the Catholic community here, you wouldn't get those benefits of being part of a church just because you said the words.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, so it works both ways. Like you get nothing because you don't go to church and you don't belong to my group. You're just a loner, man.
Right.
You're just like Pee Wee Herman, just a loner, just going out there riding the wind.
So I will tell one quick story that is related. It's the most combative I've dealt with, and I did not say that I was an atheist in this situation. So at work on every Friday, I lead a call with our entire department, which now is like 70 people, but not everybody gets on. And it's a fun call. It's 30 minutes to get to know each other. We have a lot of people that are remote, so we don't all get to see each other. There's a whole bunch of people we haven't met in person yet. And so we have this call every Friday, and I lead it, and I try to come up with different things to keep us going, so that we have something to come into, and we're not just like, hey, this is what I'm doing this weekend because it's Friday mornings. So a couple weeks ago, I'm doing Would You Rathers, and I've written down a bunch of Would You Rathers that are work appropriate ahead of time, and I had let a couple of people in the office know so that they would help come up with some Would You Rathers as well. And again, all work appropriate. And Suba, you know Suba.
We all know Suba. She's been on the show.
Suba comes up with a completely work appropriate one, which is, would you rather be able to speak any language and talk, to talk to everybody, every human,
which I can do, so it's a cool perk.
Or would you rather be able to talk to any animal? And I, just being annoying, said, well, humans are animals, so I would choose any animal. Then I could talk to any human or any animal.
Bam.
And there's a guy in our department who is a minister, and this is his second job, or this is his first job, and he ministers. I don't know. He's brand new. He's been here like a month. And he goes, and I think everybody else understood, because I have, that brother sister dynamic, the annoying, like nudgy dynamic with Suba. Everybody else understood that I was being annoying on purpose, and it was funny. But this minister comes on. To
quote the great Homer Simpson, "It's funny because it's true."
Yeah. Yep. So this minister comes on, and he goes, "Humans aren't animals." And I was like,
we're plants, clearly.
And so I'm like, oh god. And I'm like, well, just from a scientific perspective, humans are categorized as animals. And like trying so hard to just be like, let's just drop this, please. Like, let's not go. And he goes, well, humans have souls. Animals don't have souls. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's like I was so, because it's work, and I'm not trying to get.
It's not the time to say, show me proof that my dog doesn't have a soul and I do. You go ahead. I'll wait. You show me proof one of us does and one doesn't.
Yeah. So I get a couple minutes down the road. We're not talking about it anymore.
Would you rather burn in hell for eternity?
No, but he does. I have another would you rather that we might be able to do. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, would you rather be a man or a woman? And I'm like, all right. And I'm just like so uncomfortable. I don't know how to react. Several people are like, this isn't appropriate. And I'm like, yeah, okay. If people are uncomfortable, we're not going to talk about this. Okay. And we move on. And that was the last of it. But then after the call ends, I get texts, because, a lot of people at work do know that I'm an atheist. And they also do know that I'm pretty combative, or not combative, but direct, and I'll speak my mind. But I've literally never met this guy in person. I've spoken to him like 3 times. So I didn't say anything. And so I started getting texts of like, good job. You did a good job not...
Way to not engage.
Yeah, because, I'm leading the call, and I don't know. I think it did a pretty good job, but it was rough.
Any other atheist group things you're interested in? So other thing about us, while we're a local group and we're locally run and funded and everything, we do have ties to national groups. We're a full chapter of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. We are an affiliate chapter to the American Humanist Association and American Atheists. And as part of that, like when we go table at things like Pride or other events, they send us swag, so we get buttons and stickers and brochures and flyers and stuff that we can hand out to people and not have to do that ourselves. They do that as part of benefit for being affiliated with them. They like FFRF will supply one speaker a year if we want them to fly out here, like one of their lawyers or lobbyists or whatever will come down on their dime, not ours, so we don't have to pay an honorarium to our speaker. They're there as a resource. Like I said, we're trying to do more political stuff, but we are 501(c), so we don't want to run afoul of what we can't do. So their legal services are there to guide us and advise us and say, yeah, here's how you can do a questionnaire, but you can't rate the people. You can just get the answers and share the answers the way you got them, so you don't cross any lines.
For anybody that's not in the Raleigh area that listens to the podcast,
screw you.
Which of those federal or those national level organizations, or why don't you break down the differences between them so that maybe that our listeners can find, oh, I want to be part of Humanist Society versus,
Yeah, so first of all, I'd say if you're not in the Triangle, you should be. No, but if you...
I don't want house prices going up any further. No, you stay where the fuck you are.
Why? You have your house, man, so you can sell it. Yeah,
but I can't afford a bigger one. I want to upgrade.
Yeah, but when Sarah leaves you'll be downgrading. But I will say you can search like where you are and words like the list I went through before, like freethinker, atheist, agnostic, secular, ex-Muslim, ex-Hindu, whatever, recovering Catholic, whatever you happen to be. Just a bunch of terms like that, and hopefully if there's a decently SEO'd website, you can find a website or a Facebook group or a meetup group of some like-minded people near you. I'll say the fact that the one thing we're saying you have in common at that highest level is not believing in a God doesn't mean you have a group of people who you like. We work real hard to try to be all things to all people in our group and have different tents. Like I say, you can find the clique that suits you best, but we try not to make the board cliquish because we don't want the group to be a clique. We want the group to be, and that's not always the case.
An opportunity to meet.
We had a speaker who is an author and a psychologist and was a member of our group when she lived in the area. And when she first came out of religion, it was from religion into our group. And then she moved to other places. She discovered some groups are not as good as us, like not as welcoming or not politically what she likes, or not as good to women or minorities or whatever. And she was like, if she hadn't met us first, she probably never would have went to a second group, after she met the group she met after us. So keep looking. There are different groups out there, but the big groups. So I'll start with Freedom from Religion Foundation because it is the one that we are a full charter member of. And the main thing that does is they helped us with our nonprofit status. They, give more of a hand and do more things for us as part of their organization.
And they do a lot of legal stuff too, right? They bring up a lot of cases.
So their main focus is lobbying and amicus briefs and law and bringing lawsuits. Well, they would say that their goal is not to bring a lawsuit, but to help alleviate a legal problem without bringing up a lawsuit if they can. So they say most of their cases, like if you say, oh, the teachers in public schools preaching to my kid, most often a letter to the principal or to the school board will clear that up. Like they're like, oh crap, those FFRF people are going to sue us. So they solve the problem without it going to a lawsuit. It's not always a law. It's usually not a lawsuit, but they do lawsuits, and some that have gone up to higher courts. American Atheists, a very similar background. They focus mostly on the legal stuff, sending letters, sending amicus briefs. Those two groups together, some of the lawyers from each of those groups have a podcast together called We Dissent. Like one lawyer from American Atheists and two lawyers from Freedom from Religion Foundation, and they all share legal stories on a podcast and issues around the Supreme Court and stuff. And they're both mostly political and legal in nature, but they also each host an annual convention. I think American Atheists is more open to the public-ish, where Freedom from Religion Foundation is really for members. Like we have our members chapter meeting there on the last day, with just official representatives from the group, not everyone who's there. But they have lots of speakers, and they have like either a band or a comedian or something entertaining, cool stuff. And AA does the same thing, but I know AA has a lot more people come in from out of town and stuff who are like a podcast. I'll say we're all going, so I don't know if you have to be a member to go to that so much, because it seems like it's more of a party atmosphere. Plus all the talks and lectures and educational stuff. And then American Humanist Association is a little different than the other two in that it has its legal component and does that stuff, but it's a lot more education focused. And humanism, for those who don't know, is the concept of, to sum it up succinctly, to be good without God is what secular humanism is. They have a whole manifesto, not a great name for it, but it goes back to like the 60s or 70s when it wasn't not so much connotation with the term manifesto as it has now. But they have a much more in depth, but basically it's the idea that you can do good and be good and focus on helping other people and improving the world without having a fear of hell or looking to heaven or supernatural guidance or motives. And they're much more about that. So we've had people from them come speak to us, and they have this great thing they came up with called the 10 Commitments rather than the 10 Commandments. And it's different things that it's kind of like, I consider myself a humanist. I don't say, oh, I'm a humanist, I must follow these 10 commitments to be a humanist, like I must follow the catechism or whatever. It's more of I agree with all of that, I must be a humanist. It's more of identifying what I already feel like.
Right. Yeah. So, sorry to interrupt. You said, that secular humanism is good without God, but humanism by itself, you could potentially still believe in God and be a humanist, right? Or...
So humanism by itself generally refers to secular humanism.
Okay.
But more liberal religions will also say, well, I'm a Christian humanist, and kind of put a religious modifier on it, and then pretty much the same thing, saying I'm into, that makes this kind of liberal social values is what they generally mean by that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So, but generally, if someone identifies as a humanist, they mean secular humanist.
Yeah.
But because if they're a religious humanist, they'll generally put the religion in front of the word.
Right. I get, yeah. I just, the reason I wanted to differentiate three major national organizations is in case we do have anybody that's listening that is like, I don't know about this, but I'd go check out a meeting, or I'd be interested in hearing more or learning more. I think that this will help like differentiate and explain, and I think that there could potentially be religious humanists, that I think that's more likely than atheists listening to this podcast at this point that we're recording. Although, Embrace the Void might bring in some new listeners.
Well, yeah, it's not necessarily an atheist podcast. It's philosophy, so a lot of philosophers tend to be atheists because, as my philosophy professor said in college, if you have religion, you think you know the answers, and philosophy is about asking the questions.
Nice.
Except he said it with a cool German accent.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't German. He just liked to teach with a German accent. Made philosophy more fun.
So, I think it's time to wrap it up, if you're cool with that.
Now it's time to say goodbye to all our family.
I
get sued.
I'm possibly in the middle of diverticulitis bout.
Yeah, diverticulitis.
So I would like to go sit on the couch in a few.
Feel free. But so look for Embrace the Void. It should come out. It should be out by now because it's supposed to come out right after, within a day or two of this record. So it'll be out by the time you all hear this. If for no other reason, because I set Aaron up for a great little practical joke in the beginning where I tell him I wrote a theme song for the episode and he let me sing it. And assuming he didn't edit it out, it's freaking hysterical if I do say so myself. And then we'll put links in the show notes to the major organizations nationally and to my local organization, of course. If you're in the Triangle, we've got events coming up. Like I said, we got the regular meetups that happen monthly. We've got a picnic coming up in September 17th. This might make it out in time for that. The picnic in Lake Crabtree, September 17th. So check out trianglefreethought.org and see if you get that. And then the following week, we'll be at Durham Pride at Duke Campus on September 23rd. And we've got I forgot to say, the other community thing is we do hikes monthly too. We meet up at different parks around the Triangle area for hikes on Saturday or Sunday morning.
Nice. This will be out for the 23rd. It will not be out for the 17th.
You guys missed a great picnic.
Yeah. It'll go out Monday the 18th for patrons, and Friday the 22nd for. Oh no, I'm wrong. We'll go out Monday the 11th for patrons. Yes, no, you did not miss a good picnic.
Yeah, come to the picnic. And if you happen to play a musical instrument that is acoustic and transportable to a park, so not a full size harp or piano, amplified music is not allowed at the park. But we usually have a little jam. My daughter brings her guitar, maybe her mandolin, and we'll lead people in a little jam session. If you want to play music while eating subs from Wegmans, I believe is what we're doing this time.
What if I just bring strawberry jam while you have your jam session?
I will smack you silly because my daughter's allergic to strawberries. Why would you try to poison my daughter, you fool?
Okay, good to know.
You could give me the raspberry if you want.
I'll bring you some ghost pepper ketchup.
That's all good.
Yeah. All right. So as far as me, I'm gonna plug patrons. I would like
patrons.
I would like to let you all know, or to let everybody know, that there's a few ways you can support us if you're liking the show. You can,
or even if you don't like the show, just
if you don't like the show,
parents.
if you just like us, or you just hate religion, or whatever. No, if you give us a good rating on any of your podcast apps, if you wanted to leave us a review,
go to iTunes app, even if you don't use it, and rate us there, because that's the biggest one. Even if you don't download it there, go ahead and rate it.
Yeah. And on Spotify, we're on Spotify, obviously. And we're actually kind of on Spotify twice because Patreon just did some partnership with Spotify. So if you are a patron and a Spotify user, you can listen to the patron feeds through the Spotify app now. So just to let you all know. But yeah, if you go on and like and subscribe, set it to download. That's really the most helpful thing. That'll help us get on. Like we can get a little bit of auto ads, get some advertising, so that we could potentially start just making a little bit of money to increase
enough money to pay what we're paying in fees at the bank would be nice.
Yeah, fees at the bank, fees for the platform. Possibly, I was thinking about possibly a camera, like a better camera, because mine always comes out grainy from just being the computer camera. Anything like, but we're just trying to put out better content for you. So if you're on YouTube, also like, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that shit. And then if that's not enough for you, if you want to be an extra special listener to this podcast, or even if you don't want to listen and you just want to support us, because you don't have to listen. No, none of this requires you to listen.
We don't care. And
just download money. And hit play while you're in the shower, even if it's on silent. But if you wanted to go on patreon.com/ talking about the big stuff, you can support us at 2 different levels right now. We have $3 patrons, which will get you $3 patronage gets you Monday show instead of Friday, so it's 4 days early. And then it also gets you uncensored versions, which means you get to hear more of Matthew being ridiculous.
Motherfucker.
That's gonna be on both versions, because I don't censor. I just censor, if we start talking about blowjobs or whatever. So that'll get cut. And then the other thing that it gets, the $10 feed gets you a couple of extra special clips that I cut from the regular patron feed because they were a little too spicy for $3. And one of them was
Logan busting into the room during the record. Whoa!
Yeah, we'll drop the ketchup off. Well, we'll drop the ketchup at some point this week. So anyway, if you wanna like, subscribe, support us, also
give
all patrons will get a shout out on the first episode recorded after they patronize us. Is that the term, patronize? That doesn't feel right. Yeah, so you'll get a shout out.
Give us a patronage.
We're also open to suggestions on other patron benefits. I think that maybe we will do, if we get a certain number of patrons, we'll say, how about 20 patrons? We'll make this any shoot the shit episodes that we do, those will be patron only.
Ooh.
There'll be bonus episodes. So does that sound good to you?
Yeah, we can shit some shoots.
Shit some shoots. All right, everybody. So thank you. We just came in an hour for you censored folks. That'll be actually
7
we
minutes.
really didn't cut
Yeah,
that
this
much
wasn't
out.
bad.
This
I'm
episode.
talking about my organization. I wasn't profane.
Yeah. All right. So thank you all.
Thanks for talking about the big stuff in a community.
The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023. All rights reserved.